Influential Iraqi cleric Muqtada al-Sadr called for changing Iraq's constitution and election procedures just a day after his supporters occupied the parliament building, deepening a standoff with the alliance of Iran-backed Shiite rivals. Now, in a statement, Mr. Sadr called the takeover of the parliament a quote-unquote revolution, a quote opportunity for radical change, close quote. Now, the alliance of Iranian-backed Shiite parties rejected Mr. Sadr's demands here, calling them quote, a coup against the legitimate system, close quote, setting up this showdown that we now have our Middle East correspondent Ariel Oseran in the studio to discuss here. Ariel, Sadr is such a big figure for decades in Iraq. This feels consequential, everything going on right now, this rift pushing back against Iranian influence, which to many outsiders we feel like it's perhaps even at an all-time high. Just what's happening right now in the standoff?
Look, David, if we put this in broad context, I mean, the images coming out from Baghdad in recent days are similar to the January 6th insurrection in Washington of storming the legislature. And I think it's no less dramatic, even if it's not hitting headlines as much. As you mentioned, we're talking about followers of influential Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, who in the past was fighting the American combat presence in Iraq. Now he's fighting the Iranian influence in parliament and in Iraq. Recent days calling on his protesters to take to parliament. They're conducting a sit-in with, you know, not pretty lofty demands of early elections, amending the constitution. In a tweet, Muqtada al-Sadr, that's how he remains in contact with his supporters. Yeah, he tells them to go out to the streets. They go out to the streets. He says, it's enough for the evening, let's head home. All this in tweets, they do that. But I think the main part that he's aiming for is a change of the political system, because we need to remember Muqtada al-Sadr, the Sadrist bloc, received the highest amount of seats in the recent elections. But given that he's not willing to create a coalition with pro-Iranian elements in Iraq,
divides that community, the Shia community,
to two main camps, the pro-Iranian Shiite camp and the Sadrist Shiite camp. Unfortunately for Muqtada al-Sadr, he is not able to build a coalition by himself, and so he called on all his members of parliament to resign, hand in the resignation, essentially paving the way for the opposite Shiite camp, the coordination framework.
Sounds like, I mean, you're talking about sit-ins and really revolutionary political tactics. That sounds like disaster for a place like Iraq. This isn't the United States where that could be peaceful. Where does this appear to be headed? Are we looking at the potential for mass street violence again in a place like Iraq?
Well, you're comparing it to the States. It wasn't too peaceful what happened in that insurrection. But where is this going?
Yeah. It is Iraq. It
is Iraq. The threshold of violence is a little bit higher over there. But if we're looking at where this is going, on the one hand, we have the Sadrist camp, which with the cleric calling on his protesters to keep on with the campaign, saying that if you don't bring on change now, don't come to me later in demand or complaining why didn't it happen. On the other side, the coordination framework, the alliance of Shiite parties backed by Iran, that is spearheaded by former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. They're calling their protesters to go out to the streets as well. And so these next few days and weeks...
I mean, this is the next few days and weeks.
No, in Iraq, we're expecting high levels of tension. This could escalate. And in the middle, you have security forces that didn't really know what to do. I mean, at first they were trying to block the protesters from the sit-in. Then you saw them, there were videos of them handing out bottles of water.
Get out of the way. Yeah.
So in the middle is the Iraqi state, not quite sure how to wedge between the sides.
Questions like, what is the state? Who is the state? I mean, the Shiites are the majority of the population in the country there, but Sadr himself and his faction, can he build a popular movement, a popular uprising even? Can he affect change? I mean, these popular front groups, this alliance led by Iran, it's powerful.
Well, you're asking, can he mobilize people to create change? I think that is what is emerging before our eyes right now. What will be the outcome of this popular movement, this grassroots movement that no one else in Iraq has the capacity to mobilize supporters like Muqtada al-Sadr has. He's very young. He's not even 50. And
not
so
even 50?
Not even 50. And so there's a lot that this can lead to in Iraq, and indeed these next few days and weeks are going to be very tense for all parties involved there.
Such an enigmatic figure for certainly during the early years of the U.S. invasion as well. Fascinating to see where it's all gone. Ariel Oseran, thanks for breaking it down for us. We'll have our eyes on Iraq.